It's live now. Here we go.
Ready, set, go. Coming to you live, it's the AutoHub show with Ian and Jeff. Here we go.
Who said you can't teach an old dog new tricks? Hi, I'm Gail Rubenstein, the founder and CEO of a company called Retail Resilient, social selling for the car industry. And we help auto dealers, auto agencies, and vendors in the auto industry sell more cars, service more cars, and make more money using our social selling strategy. That includes TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and anything else you can think of. So if you're looking to invest thousands and make millions, we're definitely the social selling company for you. Like I said, who said you can't teach an old dog new tricks?
I was at Larry Coleman's seminar. So happy I came, having such a good time. Thank you so much, Larry.
One of the best trainers in this area for sure. I don't know about anywhere else, but as far as I know, he's the best. So,
Told you twice. Thank you for having me here.
I'm at Larry Feldman's seminar, and what I found is that what he's really good at doing with his knowledge and with his training, he's not filling a bucket, he's lighting a fire.
Ways to improve. Every month we want to improve better on what we did the month before, maybe the year before. It's about how fast we can get the cars done with quality work to get it to the front line, because that's where we make our money. And the bottom line is the longer it takes, the more money we spend. We want to get it down as low as possible. Right now, like I said, we're in a great stage. We're at 4.5 days. In recon, we want to know how quickly we can get the cars out of the recon process and to the front line. The average days in recon and then the time to line are the most important thing to do. I'm Mike Burrell, I'm Service Director at JM Lexus.
All right, good morning. So I am going to add a special welcome to one of our new sponsors from VidCalls, Joel. If you're interested in applying for the free trial, you can definitely check it out, vidcalls.com, and you can see the details in the far right corner if you're on the show streaming. All righty. So I picked a few books. Ludicrous, The Unvarnished Story of Tesla Motors. Clean Disruption of Energy and Transportation by Tony Sheba, and Preston Tucker, The Battle to Build the Car of Tomorrow. So go ahead, Jeff.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Before we get started and get ourselves into trouble, we have our disclaimer, which is the views and opinions shared today are those of our guests and not necessarily that of the AutoHub show. And of course, with Don Brady on, it's very controversial. So
nice.
How to prepare for the inventory show. We all know that inventory has been a little hard to find, and especially in the new cars, but also in the used cars over the past. That's about to change if it hasn't already. So let's get into it. So go ahead, Mr. Jeff.
Well, thanks again. We got a very eclectic group of people joining us today, and everybody's quite related to inventory, but we opted not to have specifically a dealer on, because he's going to say, oh, we're about to professional, we're going to go out, now we're going to go. And OEM people say, well, how we're going to do it is, I know a month ago we said that we weren't going to do this, and we were just going to make everything order online. But now we got low interest financing, and we got the dealers take 75 truckloads of cars this week. Because the Chevy guys want 75 truckloads of Sparks. So, they're not to do that, but we have a great group of people here. Join us for the first time on the Monday show is our good friend Jeremy Bravard. I hope I pronounced it right.
That was actually pretty good.
Well, thank you. Of Vincue, which is a great company for actually getting inventory. And just before I ask Jeremy to introduce himself in his first question, I do recommend, please, everybody visit our sponsors, And we love our sponsors because they make this happen and they keep this highly advanced operation going. But thank you to them because they're pretty great. And we have Joel joining us today. By the way, Joel's VidCalls is like a virtual salesman, but a real salesman. And I also see that he's got a subsidiary coming with the virtual balloons and the virtual wavy helmet. First of all, Jeremy, so introduce yourself a minute. And I want you to do that. Answer this first question, please. What's the biggest challenge for dealers now that inventory is increasing? Stale process or stale thoughts? Go ahead, please.
Yep. So it's great to be on the show. My name is Jeremy Bravard. I'm the senior director of sales at Vincue. So I run the inside sales team, kind of side by side with Mr. Danny D, who a lot of you I know have seen speak. So to answer that question, I think it's both. I think it's stale thoughts and stale processes, which we see on a daily basis. You know, we have a private party acquisition system. Most of you know that. Just rewiring and reprogramming a dealer to get away from that, just clicking on Smart Auction and Manheim and filling up the lot with a car they're going to be $2,500 in before it ever touches the customer's foot. Is really what we're trying to show the world. So I think a lot of the newer generation and newer technology that's coming into the industry is kind of helping, I think, shift and shape what business is going to look like in the next 5 years. You know, a lot of the products we compete against are pretty archaic, and the reason for that, I don't believe they were coded for this much change to happen. Obviously, coronavirus and a lot of those things put it in car dealers, but what we've seen is the guys that put the foot on the gas compared to the guys that put the foot on the brake are really the ones that have kind of grown exponentially. And Don, probably just as good as me, the guys that got scared and went in the corner, a lot of them went out of business, unfortunately. And a lot of the guys that just pushed the gas and started getting creative and getting away from radio and TV and started, doing digital campaigns on social are the dealers that are thriving today.
Well, that's very true. It's an interesting thing because, we just went through 2 years where basically as a dealer, you just had to have a car. And you made money. We've been talking about it for months because, we've had people on that says, no, the industry's changed. You're not good. The manufacturers aren't going to stop us with inventory. No, we're not going to have to start buying ads, etc. And then we had a dealer show about 3 weeks ago, and they said that all of a sudden all their leads are what's your best price. And they haven't seen that in a long time. So thank you very much. Next we have joining us is George Berridge. And George mentioned earlier he had a Vincue shirt on, but he said he had to change it because it was too cold. But George's in Florida. And for anybody located north of the, 45th parallel, Florida's pretty darn good right now. George, introduce yourself, please, and answer the question about the challenge. Stale process or stale thoughts?
I would say it's, I've got to follow Jeremy on that. It's stale process and stale thoughts. The dealers still are, I sat down with 2 dealer groups last week and chatted with them briefly. And, it's not the fact that they're advertising on digital or advertising on TV or anything. A lot of them just haven't jumped back into that game and they're seeing their traffic go away big time. But the process, the stale thoughts or the sales staff. I mean, sales staff last year were sitting at their desk and, hey, the guy coming in and he wanted to buy a Toyota Tacoma. There's the one we've got. You want that one? If not, we've got more coming in, and they were pre-selling. So the service department was stale because you knew they had to prep the car when it got there because it was already sold. So the processes are screwed up in the service end, the sales end. You have to, teach a salesman that he has to work his tail off to make a couple $100 in comparison to last year. He sold 5 to 10 cars. He was making great money. So I think it's just a reawakening period for the dealers because of the fact that, they all complained about Carvana, but all Carvana did was try to put their gas pedal on and advertise everywhere you could look. You'd see Carvana commercials. And they all hated, Carvana. But reality is, I watched in 2008, I watched a Ford store in Tampa go from the number 4 Ford store in the country to now he's the number one Ford store. He was number 4 in Tampa, and now he's the number 1 Ford store in United States. And that's because he full throttled with every kind of marketing and advertising when everybody else was saying, we got to be careful or we're going to go broke. And I think you're seeing that now with dealers that are smart enough to, build their campaigns, but also use process to improve it. Like we were discussing Brad Vinstock, with the service pickup and delivery. It's just, you got to think outside the box to build your customers. I think the smart dealers are doing it, but a lot of the dealers are reeling right now and don't know what to do. And they're almost in panic mode. Some of the dealers with, inventory's ramping up. What do we do next?
Yeah, well, that's for darn sure. That's it's definitely interesting. Our next guest, of course, is a internet celebrity. He's going to start dropping his last name. He's going to be like Sharon McDonald. It's just going to be Dawn. Don Brady, the Vice President of Customer Success from Ship Your Car Now, the President, CEO, Chief Auto Watcher, Chief Decorator of Don Brady Consulting, Inc. And Dawn, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself, but I'm going to adapt this question because you're in the transport side of things. And during COVID, they were buying cars everywhere and shipping them. What's the biggest challenge now for them is the fact that now they've got inventory. What is their biggest challenge?
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for inviting me. I'm Don Brady, the Vice President of Dealer Success for Ship Your Car Now. I'm President and CEO of Don Brady Consulting, Inc. I love the business. Just like everybody, it's a cycle. And I remember being a GSM to a salesperson in the 08-09 time period when obviously everybody thought the economy was going to disappear. And I sold more cars than I had ever sold through that period and made the most money I'd ever made. And it was all about thinking outside the box. The dealers that through the inventory punch that thrive looked everywhere for the inventory. And I have dealers that were buying cars from all over the nation, 1s, 2s, truckloads, and bringing them to their store. And that's not going to be any different. I mean, you still have to think outside the box. And then realize too that your customers aren't just a minute away. They can be from anywhere in the country. And I'm helping them bring cars to their store. So it's working.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Because I know that you were doing lots of one-offs before, and now maybe you're doing truckloads of that. So that's great. I do want to say too, Don's quite a good friend of us here at the AutoHub show. We every time we see him live, it's a big hug fest. And, Don, I still want to do the Air Jordans, those light up shoes with the market. Yeah, next question.
How quickly are we going to return to inventory's best practice, or we write new ones? That I think is the big question. I talked to a bunch of dealers last week in person, and it depended on the brand. The Honda Toyota stores seem to be in a different boat than the domestic stores I talked to. But what do you think? Let's start with Jeremy. What do you think?
So, obviously the dealers that are in our mind, at first when we created this business, were the independents, some of the smaller franchise stores. So, and what we've learned to teach them is private party acquisition. So for who's listened to Danny speak, he talked about war, wholesale auction, retail, and the money isn't made selling the car, the money is made buying the car. So we're pushing big time on private party acquisition and going out to the public and buying cars. When I sold for Cecil Van Tile back in the 90s, we would have, a couple show up here and there, and, the sales guy would try to kind of dodge it. I think he made $100 if he acquired the car. So changing that just strategy in general, getting on social, buying from the public, I think is going to be the way they succeed.
So you don't think inventory levels are going to come back to normal anytime soon? What do you think?
I think they're starting to slowly come back. So I bought a truck recently, and I had permission from the wife 6 months prior, which is rare for me. So, and I get to test my own deal when I go to the store. So even for me, someone that trades every year, I went almost 2, and it was, the prices of the, trucks were, almost retail for a, 2-year-old truck. So I think they're slowly coming back. Don can speak to that. I mean, I'm pretty sure you're shipping more cars. Probably, I felt the swing about 45 days ago. It started to shift back into more of a seller's market. And what a lot of these dealers are having trouble with, and I know we're going to talk a little bit about this more on the show, is, what do you do with all those cars you bought 6 months ago? So Danny at Country Hill, they're fortunate to be very liquid, so they don't floor plan anything. But for the rest of the world, Ally floor plan and a lot of that stuff is creating havoc on their bottom line. And like you're talking before, guys went from sitting at their desk making, $6 or $7 grand on the front to now selling a mini and taking twice as long, and having customers being able to negotiate. So I think it's gonna level out next week. Probably not. I think the new car levels. I think the used cars will follow the new cars. So as new cars start to level out, but we're here based in Kansas City. We have a Ford plant about 15 miles from here. And if I was to guess, there's about 2,000 trucks just sitting there waiting for chips or, waiting for this and that. So like you talked about, the import brands, I think are going to be at an advantage. And the domestics are going to have a hill to climb just to get cars on the ground just due to chip shortages and stuff like that. So I'm guessing the next 6 months, this is going to level out. It's going to help our business as well. We've got an internal team that buys cars from the street for dealers, and we obviously sell a vehicle buying center, which allows dealers to buy from the street. But it's been tough over the last, I'd say, 6 months, because you have consumers that were selling at a high rate. A lot of people are unemployed, and a lot of people are selling cars, but they're kind of still stuck 6 months ago, where their car could have went from 15 grand to today being worth 9. Trying to educate a private party seller that, hey, the market shifted, and your car's just not worth it. So we're hoping in the next 6 months to answer your question in the short version. But it's going to be still a challenge, and a lot of dealers are going to have to adjust their thinking process and rewire their team. Because I think it was George that said, a lot of the sales guys are kind of the ones that are stuck in that sales thought process, just because they were used to, hit people over the head. And unless, they've been there 10 or 15 years, they kind of see, I remember cash for clunkers, and you had 6 customers, sitting on the car going, hey, wait, is it my turn yet? So I watched that through the shift of, people selling these newer cars like Range Rovers for 20 grand over to now those Highline stores are slowed down quite a bit.
Right.
Hey, Jeremy, Larry Feldman here. Everything you said, I agree with. The business is cyclical. We've seen this. Man, I'm an old dog. I remember when used car leasing was in vogue before all those banks took a hit. And any dealer that thought, okay, this is great, we'll just ask 5,000, 10,000 over list forever, and didn't attempt to adjust their inventory along the way, I'm not being disrespectful, but it's almost like they were asking to get hit in the head with a brick. Because obviously this couldn't last. And it's the oldest cliche in training, best time to fix your roof is when the sun's shining, not when it's pouring rain. And that might have been a good time to say, hey, everybody's got money in their pocket. Now's a great time to talk about the future and tune into training. Because when salespeople are desperate and they're broke, that's when they're at their worst. That's when they skip all the steps and jump right into when you take it today and they're sweating. But I think it was a pretty damn good time to grab people when they had plenty of money in the bank and say, guys, let's be realistic. Nothing good or bad lasts forever. Now's a great time to think about the future. And any used car manager or owner that didn't keep an eye on their day's supply, they were just asking to get their brains beat in.
Hey, by the way, I heard of a dealer that actually brought in for a Saturday sales meeting a financial planner about a year ago to talk to their guys to say, because the bottom's going to fall out here.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. The other issue you have is, the guys that they were hitting for 6-7 grand over. I mean, how are they ever going to trade? They're going to come back, and that customer you may have sold 6 or 7 cars to, and he paid $7,000 over on that last one, and he shows up and realizes not only did he pay $7,000 over, his car's worth 70%, to cost the market, and he's not going to be able to trade unless he's got $20,000 down and a 900 beacon. So they killed a lot of relationships. Pigs get fed, hogs get slaughtered is the saying, and they didn't necessarily have to clip people for $6-7 over. They were just taking advantage of the situation. And I like to invest, and there's a saying, when there's blood in the water, it's time to eat. But at the same time, like you said, they were kind of asking for it, now getting away with what they were getting away with. So if they would have had the consumer in mind, I think they could have gained a lot of market share. Not being the guy, because there was, there's dealers here in Kansas City, it's pretty saturated. You'd have new car dealers, charging $10,000 over on an F-150, and you had some dealers not. They just wanted lit. And they were still making good money and still getting their hold back and all that. But
Jeremy, I wasn't
super greedy.
I wasn't talking about being altruistic. I was talking about thinking ahead for yourself. For even if your own selfish interest, I had a lot of muscle as a salesperson. I was a top guy, so I could push my back on my managers. And I'm proud to say, just because I'm not a moron, that I never put anybody into an 84-month finance. Oh, you left money on the table. No, I didn't. When the guy comes back in 2 or 3 years, I got another deal. So it's great for guys that are in the business for 4 months. Now they're putting sprinkles on donuts, Dunkin' Donuts. But for guys that want to think long-term, you need to think long-term.
George, what do you think?
And the domestic.
I'll have to agree with a lot of that because, there's certain stores that have just clubbed the customer, but, those customers are going to try to buy a car in 2 years or a year and a half or whatever the case may be. They may try to trade back in a year. But I also think there's going to be some lending institutions that are going to be coming towards the dealer. I mean, I think Upstart and a few of them are creating an automotive marketing scheme that they're going after. And, they'll package the $10,000 upside down customer into a new car based on credit and AI that they're doing. So I think there's going to be a lot of things, but it's going to be pretty chaotic. I mean, I talked to a dealer the other day who has a Chevy store and a CDJR store. His CDJR store has cars hanging out their head and has total inventory of, I think they had 47 Overland Gladiators on their lot last Friday, and they're not pressing the sale because they haven't been advertising. And then you go to their Chevy store that has 12 cars on it, and guess what? They're not selling cars because they don't have inventory. So I think there's chaos with the sales staff. I think there's chaos with the inventory situation. So I think it's going to be a hard time to figure out the level off because certain manufacturers are coming up with inventory and shipping cars, and other ones are finding ways to not be able to ship inventory. Like Chevrolet, just seems like they just have not figured it out. So there's lots of cogs going on, and some of those guys working at Chevy stores may end up flipping burgers or going to another dealership or looking for inventory. So it's a great time for if you're a spot on store that's done the right things. It's a good time to get aggressive good salespeople and pay attention to who you're getting, because some of those guys have been sitting on their tail for 2 years making stupid money. But I think it's a good time for the guys that have their stores fixed and have their stores being trained and have their customers walking in the front door. Those guys can just keep excelling. So I think there'll just be a separation of good stores and bad stores because it's going to happen, because there's a lot of the stores that, there's 2 Chevy stores sitting next to each other. And if one of them didn't club the customer and he's getting inventory on turn and earn, and the other one who's just clubbing them as they got the cars in, they're going to have it a little tougher. But, there's ways to persevere. But I think there's some of those stores that haven't branded themselves and built themselves online or any kind of advertising or anything are going to feel that glitch, and they're going to lose sales staff. So it's going to be chaos. That's probably the best term for it.
But there's good news. There's good news. On this show, you have Peter Smith, who can show any dealership how to run more efficiently. You got Don Brady, who, besides having the coolest shoes you ever seen in your life, is the best transport I've ever seen or heard of. And you happen to have the humble Larry Feldman, who can find any sales or service personnel and is an incredible trainer, if my wife can humbly say so. You put me up to it. I would never speak that vocally.
Thanks, Larry. Don, I mean, obviously.
Show them your shoes, brother. They think we're exaggerating.
I actually am not wearing those shoes today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's great. I gave you a big build-up, and now you're wearing socks. This is like Sonny and Cher doesn't show up without a costume change.
Yeah, I'm sorry. No costume today.
So, Don, what do you see on the moving around of cars? I mean, are you seeing a change in what's moving? Are you seeing? I mean, you're in the day-to-day of it.
Well, so here's what's neat is some of my dealers haven't changed a thing. Like their inventory is growing, but they're still looking for those cars. And I got a couple of them that actually got made fun of because they went 300, 400 miles away to buy a Ford Taurus that had low mileage. And people are like, you could get that at the auction like 5 minutes from you. But he was looking for he went for the mileage, and he says this car, and he would price them accordingly and move them. I had dealers that were looking for new car inventory from California, and they were in New York, and bringing them by the truckloads through the crunch, and they weren't scared. I mean, I guess I can't say they weren't scared. They were confident. They were going to price them correctly and sell the cars regardless. The dealers that got scared were selling off their inventory because they were, scared. All right. So I guess I'm going to say things haven't really changed. I went through, and I feel like an ambassador out there sometimes when I'm, the dealers that were bashing Carvana and Vroom, I kept saying, don't bash them, learn from them and learn from their mistakes. Right. And yeah, I didn't like them either as far as the bashing of an industry that I care about. And, people don't get electrocuted in the finance office, but they prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that there are customers that will buy without without seeing a vehicle and driving it. And we can argue how big of a percentage or small of a percentage that those people are, but they prove that there are people that don't want to come into a car dealership. So you had to adjust from the when can you be here on the phone to with those people, how far in the process do you want us to take you? If it's all the way, then we can go all the way. Carvana and Vroom didn't sell new cars. New car dealers did. So now you have the ability to get your customers from anywhere, new and used, and do it the right way. And I was fortunate enough to help a lot of those people out there. And then you got the dealers that I would walk into that would tell me that the internet is a fad that's going to go away, right? You can't really help those guys. The internet's not a fad. It's not going away. Embrace it, but still be good with the customers that come in the door. To talk about what Larry brings up, it drives me crazy. And I wasn't mad at the dealers that sold for 20, 30, 40, sometimes 100,000 over MSRP on a certain Corvette, right? What I was more upset about was the cockiness of some of the salespeople out there that when a customer did call, instead of just saying politely, no, we can't sell it for anything under 5,000 over MSRP, they would literally say, oh, you don't want to pay that? Well, good luck, and hang up on that customer. The cockiness and the rudeness, I think, is going to come back to haunt them when the inventory is big and you're not going to be able to sell for 5,000 over MSRP. And a lot of those customers were local, and you bash them because they wanted a discount, because that's what we trained them. We train customers for discounts from way back when. So yeah, when the inventory got into a crunch, now interest rates are rising. It's hard to convince someone that doesn't absolutely need a car to pay 9% interest on a car. They're going to be like, I'll wait. It's all in cycles. We trained a lot of the people on what they wanted, and then when they actually wanted the discounts, then we bashed them. That's never going to work, in my opinion.
Right.
Ron, you don't have to wait till business comes back. They already got hurt with cocky salespeople because people don't live in a vacuum. Everybody's involved with a family, an organization, a job, so everybody can help you send 10, 11 more cars, right? Is there anybody that hasn't seen somebody that pulls up in a new car and they say, where'd you get it? Don't go there, they suck. It's just as easy to say, you got to go see my buddy Don or George or Joel. This business, that's the part that never changes, that it's the people business. And if you make it friendly and welcoming and actually show you appreciate, That's great. That's why CSI hey, there's your wife. Hey, Mrs. Brady. That's why CSI.
That's actually Amber. She came to visit me today.
She snuck in too quick. There you go. Hi, Amber. I'm your crazy friend your dad likes to hide from. It's okay. You can't hide now.
I don't hide from him. That's Larry.
But it's insane. I mean, the business is still the business. It's how you treat people and how you make them feel about what they're doing. What the hell would be wrong, Don, with if they said, listen, the market's crazy. Let me get your information. Let me see what I can do to help you. It's not always be selling. It should be always be helping because everybody likes to be helped and nobody wants to really feel like they're getting sold.
Fair enough. Jeff?
Well, sometimes, Larry, you mentioned that, and sometimes I think in our business, the term helping people is actually something somebody says, I don't want to help people, I want to help me. And, I've always said that if a dealership has a bad salesperson, it's because they got a bad manager. If the dealership has a bad manager, because they got a bad administrator of that manager. If they got a bad admin, it's a bad dealer. And anybody that gets away with doing that, they're begging now and they're out of the business. And unfortunately, they've accelerated the already high turnover because the old saying that the strong will survive and the weak have already run away. So, George, what's your recommendation for dealers to acquire the right product, considering that the used supply and prices are slowly improving and OEMs are likely, they're going to return to building all those two-wheel drive regular cab F-150s, without any stuff?
The bottom line is I think the stores need to pay attention, train their staff, get their staff back on focus. And then I think the guys that are running the store should do that, run the store, get their staff ready, get their inventory ready, make sure recon's done right, make sure all those things are done right. And, 95% of them who think they're marketing geniuses should probably hire somebody to be their marketing geniuses. Don't pay attention to what the OEM tells you to buy and sign up on. Don't just grab stuff because it's co-opable. Do the right thing and get somebody that's, that you can trust and put the trust in them and let them run with your marketing with a branding opportunity for your store. And, you push the inventory and metal the way you're supposed to with your staff and training and rely on a marketing team to do the rest.
Okay, no, that's a good point. And you've been around a while, so many of the management, many of the people making, I saw that. Right. Many of the people making decisions at the moment, because they're getting younger and younger and younger, have never had to deal with fighting a manufacturer that says to you, because I'll pick Ford again, if you want to get that King Ranch, which you got 6 orders for, I need you to take a bunch 8 EcoSports and 2 manual transmission escapes, etc., etc. What do you tell them?
They have to learn to do that. I ran a Ford store back in the day where they give you 40 Escorts every time you got 10 F-150s, and you'd have to figure out a way to sell them because you could sell the 10 F-150s, but now you got 10 mauve-colored Escort wagons on your lot to try to figure out how to get rid of. So I have been around a while, but that's going to happen to them as they start loading up inventory. CDJR stores are going to say, "Hey, great, you want brand 1500s? You're going to have to take so many Renegades because nobody wants a Renegade." But they're going to get them pushed down their throat, and they're going to have to accept them. So that in turn means you need to market that product to the right customers, and just thinking hey, spend 20 grand a month on Google or whatever the case is isn't the right way to market. So they need helping hands, and like I said, they need to quit thinking they're the professional marketing guys because they listen to a call, and really make sure they're doing the smart things and not wasting their advertising budget on advertising Ram 1500s when there's 5 on their lot. So they need to be more specific and granular about the way they advertise.
Perfect, thank you. And I do have to say, I was a Chrysler guy, and those Renegades, you couldn't give them away. But I am seeing Renegades on the auction with 150,000 miles on these things.
Agreed.
Miles. So somebody's doing something right. somewhere on that thing, although it's the underpinning of everything else. Peter, you wanted to share your great knowledge.
Well, thank you guys. Just going back on what people have to actually realize what's going on in the marketplace. I'm working with a Toyota dealership here in Toronto, and I did a market study for that Toyota dealership. Within 30 minutes drive of it, there's 23 Toyota dealerships. 23 Toyota dealerships within 30 minutes. And now, want to talk about market spend, they have the largest Facebook association, basically, with people on their Facebook of all the dealerships, and they haven't posted on Facebook in 10 months. 10 months.
Wow.
It's like, how can you just be so blatantly disruptive to your own business by not recognizing things? And that's one of the things that this business is going to have in the next 18 months is the great reset of knowledge and data, and we're going to bring it back so that they know where they're going to be or where they have to be before they start spending again, because they're just going to spend themselves out of business. They're going to, like George said, you're going to advertise Tundras, which you don't need to advertise. You don't need to advertise Tacomas. You don't need to advertise Camrys or Corollas. You need to advertise the other cars that you're getting stuck with to get, because everyone will just come anyways. So it's an incredible opportunity for people to really go back to a reset and say, hey, we got to train our people, we got to train our marketing team, we got to get a true marketing team in and start managing the inventory properly.
Now, we also had a comment, Jeff, about the financing side too. As we get more inventory, obviously turn rate is going to be more and more important with a higher interest rate on the flooring of new and used vehicles.
Well, that's very true, and I do hear that you can now get 108 months on a Honda Fit.
Oh, wow.
Comment about all the Toyota dealers in a 30-minute drive. I was watching George and I was watching Dawn, and one thing that Americans don't understand in Canada is the manufacturers have a 5-mile market area or market radius. I'm not sure in the States, but there's, the States, of course, is 10 times the size of Canada, but you can drive for 30 minutes and not find a dealer in the States. In Canada, short of the prairies, you can't, because literally, there's a dealer you can stand on the roof and you see your same brand there. The other thing I mentioned before I go to Jeremy on this, is my recommendation for a Toyota Honda dealer right now is to hire a former domestics manager, because they don't understand having to suffer. And I went from Chrysler into Toyota and we rocked it. Not because I'm so great, which I believe I am, of course, but it's because the mindset of a domestic person is I gotta grab that person before they leave. The mindset of a Toyota Honda person is, what do you mean you're leaving? And that's the thing. Jeremy, what's your opinion on recommendation to acquire the right product considering the situation?
Yeah, so again, it goes back to the private party for me. Where there you can drive for hours before you run into a dealership here in the States. We're kind of on the border between Missouri and Kansas, so there's quite a few miles between stores. However, it's pretty saturated here in Kansas City. And back to, I think what Larry was talking about, going to social, and if you've got a good following on Facebook, you're talking 3 billion users, and I think that number is pretty low, but they said there's I think it's 2.93 billion users on Facebook, and they spend an average of about 20 hours of their time per month on social media, which still seems low. I know I'm probably 2 hours a day myself. So, going to those outlets, even TikTok, I don't have an account yet, but a lot of dealers are advertising on TikTok and doing videos. So I think, going out of that box that we've been in for the last 10 years, I think is really what, again, going to separate the guys that are going completely close, and the guys that are gonna, increase number over number. So I've got dealers that, when I ask them how were you, last year, 2 years prior, and they're doing better today than they ever have before, regardless of interest rates and regardless of all these issues, because they don't have that scarcity mindset. I think somebody talked about just dealers being scared and as a salesperson, selling scared or doing anything with fear in the back of your mind, you're not going to operate at the capacity, and you're not going to take the consumer into consideration. I was fortunate to meet Cecil Vantile and sell for the Vantile Automotive Group back a long time ago, and I always will remember they had a big sign in our meeting room that said, "People don't care until they know you care." And I always carried that with me, and Larry talked a lot about that. This is a people business. I've been in SaaS for almost 12 years now, and retail on 10. I would guess 80% of the reason people do business with me personally is they like me. And most of my guys that produce at a high level, they're likable people. And it's you can have that guy that's got a terrible personality, just a power closer, and you'll have that guy, but he's probably 1 of 100. The guys that really are the guys that are getting through this are just likable people, and they're more consultants. So we're not selling. You don't need to sell. No one likes to be sold. I avoid certain stores like Nebraska Furniture Mart here in Kansas. I mean, you can't step 5 foot in that place without 16 people, asking what you want and where to go. And I mean, the place is 2 miles long. I'm not sure what I want yet. I'd like to walk around a little bit. So I think it's someone put in the chat, the Great Reset is coming out. I love that because it's a lot of people see reset or this huge flip is a bad thing, but at the end of the day, I think there was a lot of negatives that came with the previous way we were doing business, and just the way that consumers and the population, even my wife, view the automotive industry and car dealers as a whole, which is what Carvana created a business on. I mean, I have good friends' wives that don't enjoy going into a car dealer and spending 6 hours and being pressured to buy a finance contract, and they can just do it on Carvana. And it's not, you don't have to hate those guys. I've got a dealer buddy that he goes, when I'm in Smart Auction and I see Carvana bidding on a car, I'll just bid them up because I know they're going to buy the car. That's kind of stupid because they've already have the car sold in 100 different places, in 50 different states. So being versatile, and like Don said, those guys that are in New York not being scared to go to California to get one. And we've got a dealer in PA. I don't even need to mention his name, Mr. Rob, bought 270 cars from the street last month. And he is not scared. He's in Pennsylvania. He's in Dillsburg, to be specific, which is no Kansas City. It's no. It's like Kearney, Missouri, if anyone's familiar with Missouri. So, but he'll go wherever. He's got out-of-state inspectors. He's got drivers, and I think he's used on before. So those dealers that I think are the dealers that will lead the way and get us away from that whole scarcity mindset. I think some of the dealers are in.
Hey, Jeremy, 3 quick comments. First of all, it's President's Day in the States for you who are in Canada. So let's quote Roosevelt, nothing but fear itself. The second thing is you can't save your way into a profit. So, the idiots that told Don Brady that the internet's going to stick around are the same idiots whose ancestors thought the world was flat. And third, we need to teach salespeople to be human again. The hell, I get Facebook and all that stuff I'm on it. But what the hell's wrong with texting 100 people and saying, call me up, I might have $100 for you. What's the 100 for? Who do you know that's looking to buy a car? You can't do it in Ohio and Virginia, but most states have bird dogs, and everybody alive wants that 100. Billionaires drive their Bentleys across town to save 3 cents on a gallon or a liter of gas.
No, you're absolutely right. Not a president, but I'll give you another good quote that I like. Is the only person that likes change is a wet baby. I think Mark Twain said it. And I don't even believe that, Ian and Jeff. So some of you know our business. We're taking a lot of dealers off of a product called the AutoHub Provision, which is they own 95% of the market. So it's like, and it's just typically changed. They're familiar with it. They've used it for the last 10 years, but it's an echo chamber. when everyone's using the same thing, typically in business, it doesn't really give you a whole lot of advantage. So, no, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. Well, I have to tell you, there's a service out there that everybody hates that costs you nothing. If you want to find out the value of a car today, retail, go on to Carvana. They'll tell you exactly what that car is worth today just by looking at it. And you don't even have to screw around with them and have to do an appraisal on your car. So these guys are on top of it. Now, so John, we're looking at you. You're laughing and everything at Larry and everything. So other than to go to ship your car now and use our 75 trucks that are just sitting there waiting to go in San Diego to take you in Rhode Island, what's your recommendation to acquire the right product? You're on mute, Don.
Yeah, I mean, I'm ready and willing to help. So, and it doesn't have to, just about anybody can move the truckloads. It's the unique 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s. I mean, I can help with any of those things. And there's not a stream in the United States of America and Canada. I mean, I can move literally internationally as well. I can move in and out of all over the place. So it's something that I can definitely help with, and I'd be honored to help. And they can actually, they don't have to reach out to Ship Your Car Now. They can hit my cell. They can text, call, email. I mean, that's one thing I've been told that people like about me is that I actually answer my phone, which doesn't always happen in the transportation world, unfortunately.
You and Larry both, that's for sure. But so what do you recommend for them to get the cars to have, and also the new? Because again, we mentioned earlier that they're going to go back to the old days of if you want that Ram pickup, you need to take a whole bunch of manual transmission Renegades.
Well, there's even those. I remember as a GM, I would cringe when those guys would call me from the. Can't remember what they basically they're dealer trade guys. They're like trying to package up deals, get you to buy it, and you buy a bunch of other stuff. I would say now I probably wouldn't just like try to get off the phone real quick. I'd probably listen a little more about what they had to say. Vincue is obviously an awesome source, for and to repeat what Jeremy says, buying from the street has always been something that we as dealers wanted to do. Putting the right money in trades and not like say no and then see the dealership literally 5 miles away paid $500 more and sold it for a $2,500 deal. I always liked the auto. I was an expert at the auto, and I was able to dig into it to not just use it as an appraisal tool or the race to the bottom, but really see the trend of where these cars are taking it on trade. But off the street, obviously that's always, I was the guy on Craigslist looking at what was being sold and, trying to get them to bring in and sell their car to me. And a lot of times those guys weren't just looking to sell an extra car, they were going to replace it with another car. So, have an open mind, buy off the street. I love the no fear thing. Rob Ruth, I consider him a good friend, and he might as well work for Vincue, it seems like. Because he'll tell you, he's buying a lot of cars from them, through them. And, I guess just be open-minded and then let me help. I have my pricing tool. While they're looking at those cars, they can look and get an instant quote on how much it's going to cost. So before they even bid or buy, they know what it's going to cost. And I can do that for them.
Actually, it's a very good point. We actually, I've got invest in a used car lot. The other day we bought a vehicle online, and the auction estimate for shipping was $500. And it's only for those Americans of you out there, it's only about 45 miles away from here. But it's 2 ferry rides, and it's a very isolated archipelago, whatever you call it. And then they called us to say they're picking it up, and it's $1,100. And so they have the instant quote, but luckily enough, I always found you call those guys in those remote places and they'll say, call Charlie. Charlie will take care of it for you. Ian.
Yeah, obviously there's lots of transportation and acquisition. What do you recommend a dealer do in transition from a market being a seller's market to what's very quickly appearing to become a buyer's market? What do you recommend they do to adapt to that change? Let's start with George because he hasn't been on a bit.
Yeah, I've been quiet for a little bit. And now, I mean, I think honestly, it still goes back to being a study of your market and knowing what sells in your market. There's plenty of reports out there to know how many F-150s are in your backyard and how many Chevy Tahoes are in your backyard. And, pay attention to your inventory. I was at a Kia store that is now a Chrysler store, and you go to their used car lot and they have a bunch of used Kias, and they're trying to figure out why they can't sell them when they moved the Kia store 4 miles down the road, but they kept the same used car manager that was used to buying used Kias at the auction. You have to pay attention to what sells in your backyard, and you have to pay attention to the logo on your front sign to see what you're going to be able to sell. And just be a student of your market. Quit trying to be a professor in your market and be a student and actually learn what sells, how to sell it, and make sure when you're in the process of buying cars from consumers that it's a nice process. If you have something on your website that says, hey, we'll give you this amount for your car, don't blow that out of the water when the customer walks in the door, because I've seen a lot of used car managers get in that phase too, that, okay, well, tell them we'll give them $1,000 less than what we, and they don't even look at the car. It's just being a student and being compassionate, because treat your customers the way you're hoping to be treated when you try to buy everything else you buy.
Great thought. Jeremy? Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, George.
No, I said that's it.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Yeah, so for me, I mean, it's going to have to be a shift in their mindset. When I went to buy my truck, I didn't get up. I walked all the way inside. It's like, I remember when I sold cars, you were on point. Like, there wasn't a car that was driving through the lot, or and not only that, you were doing a walk around, you were blowing up the car, you were showing them the headlights, and then I remember the dual reflection headlights when those came out for GM. It was like, look in there, and like a lot of those things they just stopped doing. They don't go on the test drive. If you don't go on the test drive, how can I say you pull them over? Like, so it's a lot of those things where they're gonna have to shift back into that mindset of, you're not just going to be able to sell the car for $6,000 over, and there are not 10 people that are lined up to buy the car. So you're, to speak again what Larry said, you're going to have to be more of a people person. You're going to have to take care of the consumer more and separate yourself from the other dealer and get away from price and start selling on value. And that value could be, Apple CarPlay. That value could be yourself and what you provide after the sale. Are you going to help them set up their OnStar? Are you going to help them schedule their first oil change? A lot of those things that were taught, by our leadership team, just typically are never executed on. So I think now more than ever, these dealers and sales teams and processes are going to have to be adjusted to the shift in the market. And I think as things level out, the guys that shift their mindset and become more of a consumer-based company, I think that this market could go so far. I mean, to speak on Carvana, we talk about buying cars from the street. They bought 462,000 units last quarter from the curb, secretly. You know what I mean? Like, so it's not, those aren't bad companies if you're smart. So Danny, that you're familiar with, he's got a CarMax literally across the street. He's just a little 120 car lot. He can throw a rock, and it's CarMax at Merriam, which, I mean, they don't carry less than 300 to 400 cars, when they could just gobble him up. But instead of just getting gobbled up, he just started doing his marketing. Hey, I'll give you more than CarMax oil, or I'll have, go to CarMax first, and then come back to me. And then he started noticing these customers, they'd go over there, and then they'd come get their $250 or $500 more. So getting creative like that, if you go to YouTube and just type Country Hill, he's got some pretty interesting commercials that he's done organically. He didn't really spend a whole lot of money on them, but they're inviting consumer interviews and testimonials. I think will play a big part. A lot of dealers, one, have never done them, and two, probably don't even know what that is. But if you sell a consumer and they're happy, why not sit them down and ask about their experience? If you buy a car from a consumer, why wouldn't you sit them down and have them, explain how courteous you were and how quick the process was, and put that on social.
It's a very.
I use it as a baseball analogy. I'm sorry, let me just throw this in real quick. I use it as a baseball analogy. Trying to get all the profit and all the referrals without proving the value is like trying to hit a grand slam in baseball with nobody on base. You can't drive home evidence, a value is not an evidence. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump on you.
No, not a problem.
No, I'm good. I love it.
I did want to mention something, Jeremy, because you gave me two great ideas. One is, one of the biggest things in HR that people talk about, that the car business, that's our, the only thing that we spend less time on there than HR is CSI. But one thing in HR that you do when somebody leaves your employee, you have an exit interview. And that's such a great point. Why not do an exit interview with your customer after they bought the car? I always, as a manager, I always met every car before they left and I said, hey, how do you feel about everything? How is it? Are you happy? Do you like how we treated you? And that, to me, I felt was very important. But the other one, which is a great idea for dealers, if you want to outmatch the giant buying companies, you offer them $250 more than what they got, and if you don't pay it more, you'll give them $250, and they come in the door. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, Don, go ahead.
I'm going to say I think everything Jeremy said was right on, and it's as you may or may not know, I'm not a big social media guy, but I think that every car dealer needs to embrace social media. I was always when I ran the campus, I had a Cadillac, Buick, GMC, and Nissan campus, and I was the radio guy, I was a TV guy, I was the newspaper guy. I really think not that I want to go back into the store level, but if I did, it would be, I would try to get buy-in on social media from every single person, from the porter to the actual owner, to max out on the amount of friends that Facebook allows at 5,000. Get on LinkedIn. I'm a big fan of LinkedIn too. There's a lot of people on LinkedIn as well. But then you got Instagram and you've got TikTok, and I would try to embrace every platform out there and get the buy-in. It's all about the buy-in though, because if you get everyone in that store like everyone's post and share everyone's post just in your own little world. I was raised in the car business to make sure that everyone knows what I do and where I do it, right? And for your circle of trust or your circle of friends, well, social media, now I've got a 39,000 circle of trust, right? That I make sure they all know what I do and where I do it. And I built my business in the last 3 years on, hey, I know a guy. That's all. People happen to, if you hear somebody shipping, hey, I know a guy, and I love it that and I'm honored when it's Don Brady. The car industry and the car dealership will be the same way. Eventually, I wouldn't be writing checks to radio or TV or newspaper. I wouldn't need to, because organically, and that's what I love about what you said about Countryside. It's organic. Organic is where it's at. You don't have to even spend money on it if you have buy-in of your team and really embrace that, because there's a lot of people that have friends that are going to buy a car tomorrow, or they're going to sell a car tomorrow, and now you're finding them on social media. So I really like that, Jeremy, what you said about Countryside.
Charlie, if you don't know, Don Brady is on social media more than Kim Kardashian, with less exposed flesh.
Oh, I'm very aware.
Jeff.
Great with 2 feet too.
Jeff, and since it is the time, any final thoughts from anybody? Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, I got to tell you something. What a great show. I just took a look at that and I went, oh my God, the hour went by like nothing. Gentlemen, thank you so much. It's a lot of fun. Don, I love seeing you. Larry, you're there all the time. Peter, George, great to see you. I wanted to talk with you at NADA, but we kept sort of like shipping in the night. Jeremy, you guys are always busy. So I thank you for sharing your expertise, your opinions. Inventory is obviously a big deal right now, and it's either a feast or famine. And the trouble is in our business, lots of inventory isn't necessarily peace. So thank you all for attending, and I'll leave you to close the show.
Thanks very much. Obviously, change is part of the car business. Accelerated change recently, and I'm sure that'll continue. Have yourself a great week. Thanks again.
And happy holiday day for everybody.
Yep.
Thanks for joining us. It was a great show, and follow us anywhere you would like on your favorite podcast, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and of course on our YouTube, or subscribe to our own channel.